Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 12th episode of the RK Leadership Podcast, where we help empower tomorrow's leaders through sharing of knowledge, experience, and inspiring stories. My name is Rob Kamranpoor, and my guests today are Angel Gonzalez from Australia and Rob DeMarco from right here in Canada. And I decided to do something a little bit different today, and we've got two guests, and we'll be discussing the topic of family and leadership, or leadership, what it pertains to within families. So this should be an interesting podcast, and I hope we get to answer all the questions throughout the podcast, and it'll be beneficial to the audience that might have some of these questions in the back of their head. So again, my guest, Rob DeMarco, is an ex or retired Navy leader. And thank you, Rob, for joining today. I really appreciate you putting your time again to join us today in this podcast. And Angel Gonzalez from Australia is an ex-journalist from back in Venezuela. So thank you very much, Angel, for taking time today to being part of this podcast. And so we can, I guess, if you guys want to start, we can start with and jump right into some of the questioning of today's session. Guys, good to go?
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. So why don't we start off with the first question that I'll pose to you guys is, how can the principles of leadership be applied to family dynamics? So perhaps I'll get Rob. Why don't you start with that?
Actually, hold on. Principles of leadership. So let's just cover that off. Like, what do you mean? Just so I understand the question best.
Okay, so the principles of leadership. Let's go back in terms of the traits of leadership. So communication, empathy, those kind of traits. How do those apply to the family dynamics?
Okay. Well. I don't quite know how to answer that question, but I'll shoot from how I interpret that question. Okay, so story. This is the rawness of it, right? You just get hit with the question. It's like, what do I say? Listen, the very first thing I find with how I feel about leadership is always primarily, I treat my subordinates or I treat my peers the same way that I want to be treated. That's one thing that my approach to at work, but it's also the same way that I am with my family, with my kids. I don't lead my family from on this podium talking down to everybody. I try to speak to them in a manner the way that I would want to be treated. I try to communication, set by example. If I'm going to expect certain things from my kids not to do, then I ought to do the exact same thing. I find, there's a lot of things that I picked up from being at work that are easily translatable to the way I parent in my home.
Awesome. Thank you. Angel, how would you answer this question?
Yes, thank you, Rob. Look at this. Leadership is applied to every area on the life. It's not only in corporative. I do believe that we start being leader by leading ourselves. So when we get to lead our own lives, we get the opportunity to live the life of others. I agree totally with you, Roberto. I do believe that parents are also the first leader of the world. The reason why I say that is because parents are the first people who has influence over another human being. So what's happening is, when we are not prepared to lead our own lives, and we are not prepared to be good parents or lead the life of another human being, then is when we start making huge mistakes. So things like emotional intelligence, effective communication, the right approach to solve problems, the right approach to deal with behavior. Those are, as you say, Rob, those are the main and basic principles of leadership And we also need to understand them to apply in our family so we can actually thrive for a better quality of life, better quality of families, and we can actually prepare better men and women that can also help to improve the quality of life.
Awesome. So I'm going to challenge you on one of the phrases that you used. So you stated that parents are the first leaders of the world, which is a very interesting phrase. But what I would ask you is, what about those who, and I'm just going to play the devil's advocate here. What about those who are not parents yet? And does that mean that they're not leaders in this world?
No, absolutely no. So what I mean is, we are all humans. We either become parents of someone when the opportunity comes, but we also have parents.
Mm.
We are coming from another human being. So what matter is, it's a full change. It's a full cycle. The cycle never ends. So what's happening when we get prepared? So let's say, for example, a young man, a young woman are not ready with the idea to become a mom or become a dad. So they might say, okay, I don't actually connect with this idea because I don't have kids. There are people that just decide, I don't want to have kids, and that's fantastic. But what's happening? Where are you coming from? You are coming from another human being. So you have a mom, you have a dad. You are coming from a home where some principles are applied every single day so you can actually function in this world. So the idea is not coming only for the people who are young at the moment or have or don't want to have kids, but it's coming from, in general, everyone else because we are human beings and we connect with people. We have families, we have nieces, we have uncles. So ideally, understanding this concept and apply it, if we apply this principle on our life first, we are going to be prepared to help another human being, to influence another human being, to live up their own quality of life. And that's the main idea. That's why I say parents are the first leaders of the world, because it's not about the position, it's not about the title, it's
Yes.
how we approach to life. It's how we approach to another human being and understanding our role and the impact that we have upon another human being. We shape personalities, we shape people. And that's something that sometimes we don't connect. We don't connect because we are busy with work, we are busy every time, and we don't connect, we don't understand how large is the impact that we have over another human being.
Excellent. And those are excellent points that you made. And I love the fact that you said we connect with people. And that's what leadership is connecting with people. Now, whether it's connecting with individuals on your team or connecting with your family members, excellent. We're always in connection with people, right? Unless you're being isolated in a box, you're constantly interacting with people, and that's a connection. Excellent. Awesome. Okay, so why don't we jump into the second question here, which is, what are some common challenges that individuals face when balancing leadership roles at work and the responsibilities within their families?
Hmm.
Who'd like to go first?
I give you the opportunity to start, Roberto.
All right. So just to give me a little bit of time to think about what I'm going to say, can you ask the question one more time?
Sure. So what are some common challenges that individuals face when balancing leadership roles at work
Yeah.
and their responsibilities within their family?
Well, I'd say to start is, if you're in a leadership role at work, you're probably not entry level, so you've got a fair amount of stress. You're probably working a set amount of hours, and at the same time, if you've got a family at home, okay, so you have at least a baby, if not kids, so there's going to be a set lifestyle that's going to be coming along with this. So if you're carrying both of those right off the bat, you've got a busy day, you've got a busy life, right? And so now you have to prioritize your energy, your patience, to be able to make sure that both are held up, but one isn't sacrificed for the other. I would say that's fairly important, because I mean you could be, Jesus, there was a phrase in the movie Glenn Ross where have you seen that movie? It's about salesmen, and the guy's so focused on work, and there's this comment where he says, he's harping on the guys about being to do better at work, and he's like, you want to be a good father? He's like, fuck you, like he's like, go home and play with your kids, and I find the answer lays in finding balance, and it's not being a workaholic, and it's not being a person who just wants to be at home. Yet you have to find that balance between the two. I'm not sure if that's a good start point for answering that question, but at least that's first what comes to my mind.
Okay, good. Angel, how would you answer that question?
Yes, absolutely. I reckon that it's something important that we need to take in mind every single day. So when we have the title, when we have the position in a company, on a corporative level, what's happening exactly what Roberto says. So we might start being workaholic. We might start working 12 hours a day, 16 hours a day. Just depends. Entrepreneurs, we start working 24 hours a day sometimes. You go you go from one day to the other one without stopping because you're trying to get something ongoing as fast as possible. That's how we do that's part of the life. But what's happening is that we get stress, and the negative stress, and that's part of the thing. When you are carrying a project, you are in two main areas in life, which is the managing stress. And you get the positive stress and the negative stress. Positive stress when you are excited and trying to get the results, and you are inspired to do the job. But the negative stress is when that start turning into a problem. It start giving you negative thoughts. It start depleting yourself because you need to carry on the project. So you don't get the right emotional position to deal with another human being, for example. So what's happening is how you balance that. I truly believe that understanding emotional intelligence is part of the thing, and not just understanding from the cognitive side. It's not just a rational thing, but it's the ability and capability that we have to apply every single day self-regulation, for example, and self-awareness. We need to be aware of our own emotions, and we need to understand how this happens. We need to understand what are the patterns that trigger certain emotions along the day. So when we actually need to balance our corporative life or job with the families, understand that we have the ability just to switch emotionally, to break the pattern from the moment in which we are involved into the job project and all the responsibilities that we carry with. And the moment when we get back home and we are sharing the time with the children, or we are sharing the time with the family, what are actually the emotions and the focus points that we need to be working on in every single space or area of the life, because separating and having the ability to separate job and family is essential. But we need to start with self-awareness, where we are, the here and the now, and self-regulation. When we see the emotion coming, when we see that, okay, I'm stressed, I'm in negative right now, So I need to turn this around because now I'm going to spend the time with my children. I'm going to spend the time with my partner. I'm going to spend the time with my family. And they want the same quality that we put in our job. They want the quality time, the full focus on them. But from a positive perspective, of course, we don't want to carry on with the negative stress from job to home, but we need to understand that the quality of time and the quality of the human being that's going to be with the family is what actually the family is needing and demanding.
That's right. And here's what I would pose in terms of challenges to you guys. So in a work environment, in a corporate environment, which you both worked, and in the household at the same time, there's responsibilities, priorities, and expectations. Those are the challenges that I would foresee. So you've got responsibilities in terms of meeting deadlines at work, and you've got responsibilities in terms of raising kids and providing and also being there for your spouse. There's priorities at work, like I said, in terms of timelines, but you also have priorities at home where you have doctor's appointments for your kids, you have functions, etc. There's expectations from your boss at work, and there's expectations from your spouse at home.
Right.
How do you tackle these challenges while being able to balance that work, your job, and not dropping the ball in terms of your responsibilities and priorities, and at home, and keeping both levels satisfied?
Right. Well, listen, maybe I'll jump in first on this one. I feel a lot of it comes down to boundaries, expectations, and just the awareness of your situation. So, I mean, I've had the environment of when I was married, I had a spouse who had a certain job, and based on the limitations of what was required for her job, I was able to identify what my boundaries were to be able to take care of the kids. Now you have to remember, we're two strong people that are living on the East Coast with no family support. So we relied heavily on having a daycare system that, open from this time to this time. And it came with, certain restrictions. So like if the kids got sick, I mean, they had to be picked up immediately. But if my ex-wife was in a job that had some flexibility, then that's great. She would be the person who would be going to daycare to pick up the kids if they were sick. And then that gave me the ability to do certain things. When she took a job that was, when she went to sea, because she was in the Navy as well, she didn't have that flexibility. So I had to be that sponge, right? And it came with having the communication with my boss, with all the people that I work with my employees. It was always having a plan in place of saying, okay, well, if I can't be here, who's my number two? What are the delegations? What are they able to do? What can't they do? Right. And I think when you've got a supportive boss who understands, who says, listen, your kids aren't going to be sick every single day, but when they do, you got to go. All right, that's fine. Now, I'll just contrast that was my life when I was married. Different story when you're a single father with 4 kids and you don't have a partner to lean on, because now when I would talk to my boss, there was a whole new set of boundaries of saying, well, I can't travel, I can't do this, and I can't do this. Mm-hmm. There's lots of great things that I bring to the table, but unfortunately, these are the boundaries that I can't cross because there's no one else who's going to come and take my responsibilities to take care of my kids when I'm on.
That's right.
So I think it's just having a clear expectation, like understanding of what your situation is and communicating it, identifying the boundaries and holding strong to those boundaries. And you can never break them. It just has to be, all right, guys, it's 5:00. I got to go. And it's not like, oh, I wish I could stay here. It's I got to go get my kids. That's it. That's all.
That's right. And I think you nailed it. And what I wrote down here for myself is the way you would tackle those challenges is through communication, which is very important. As a leader, you need to learn, you need to know how to communicate, whether it's at home, at work, etc. You need to learn how to delegate, again, whether at work or at home. You need to delegate certain things because you just can't take on everything. And asking for help. Again, leadership, it's so important. And I think a lot of people forget this, and they try to put the onus on themselves, and they try to put too much on themselves. And that's where you have that breaking point where it's okay to ask for help. Now, whether at home, whether it's your parents to watch your kids, whether it's the neighbor or your relative or friend that you need to watch your kid at times, or daycare or whatever it may be. And same as work, you need to talk to your boss and say, hey, I need help on this. I can't take on everything, by myself. And those are the things you need to have in your back pocket when you're facing challenges as a leader. So that would be just, that would be my take on those challenges.
And I think, as a leader or as a human being, you have to have the strength to enforce those boundaries as well.
Yes.
Because, you're always going to have scope creep happen at work, where a boss or a colleague or someone is going to impose on you to say, oh, I just had this thing that came up and can you just take this on? And a lot of people, there's the people pleaser part. There's this initial reaction to say yes. There's this initial thing to say, I want to help out. But you can't commit something that you can't follow through on.
That's right.
If you're going to be blowing through a boundary, you're going to get into trouble, because all of a sudden now, what's the end result? Are you going to go and pick up your kids late from daycare after the closing hour? No, that's not possible. Are you going to run yourself are you going to redline yourself where you're so stressed that you're coming home now and you're no longer the father that you want to be, because now you're short patience because you've been trying to juggle 15 things at the same time? I think it's a situation a lot of people can find themselves in. They don't want to get there, but they end up there because they don't identify those firm boundaries.
That's right. And it's very important to learn how to say no. Like you said, you can't always say yes to everything because you put yourself in that predicament, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Angel, I'm going to turn this to you, and just within that same question, this is something you brought up, and when it comes to mental health and the impacts of mental health in a situation and these challenges that we just discussed, how do you avoid burnout?
Yes,
Both at home and in your work life.
yes. Look, burnout is something that we all experiment once in life. How to avoid it is part of the ability
Mhm.
of being self-aware. And when we are not self-aware, is our capability to listen others. Lead by being led is something important to take on board here. For example, I'm going to tell you, in my experience, my personal life, I experienced burnout a few times. And one of the reasons why I experienced that is because I didn't set proper boundaries, as Roberto and you said just a minute ago. Setting boundaries is part of the thing, is part of the keys that we need to hold with ourselves all the time. And setting boundaries at home and at job as well. Now, when we experience burnout, it happens because of we are so involved into something that we don't realize how much we are depleting ourselves. So we put more the importance we are giving to something else, to the project, to the job, to someone else, rather than putting on ourselves first. What's happening is, so time pass, days pass, and we don't realize that until it's late. until we see ourselves on the mirror and say, what the heck happened here?
Yeah.
So I want to come back to the job. I want to get away from my family. I want to run away from everything, or I need just to get into therapy because I cannot deal with this anymore. And there are a few things that we need to understand, and it's part of the challenge that you throw first. So responsibilities, priorities, and expectations. It's all about it. Understanding this matrix that we apply in the corporative world, but we rarely apply in life,
Yes.
is really, really important. So what priority go first was important, oversee everything, and we need to understand that we have expectation about other people, but other people also have expectation about ourselves, and our
Yes.
performance is not going only in the corporative area. Our performance is every day from the moment that we wake up, what we do, how much time we spend working out, what's the quality of meal that we are having on the day. So we need to start setting expectation of ourselves because that's going to have an impact, direct impact over everything else. And understanding that, I reckon is part of the principle that to tackle that challenges and to avoid falling burnout. And something that the experience gives you is not that okay, a young man, a young woman just starting life and getting the first job wherever they are, and they want to make a little bit more money, so they get extra cheap, and they don't have responsibility. They say, what the heck, I don't need to do something else but getting money because I want to do this and that and have this and that. And understanding this from the very beginning, avoid to fall in those mistakes late in life.
Yes.
Because what happens is we are what we do. So we start adopting habits in early life, and we don't realize that until you get burned out. So what happened? A little kid, 16 years old, start working in a fast food environment, 16 hours a day because they want to get some money to go out, hang out, and party all day. That's fine. We say that. But what happened with that person came to the 30s and is working the same path, is
Yes.
working the same pace, and then get to the 40 to the 50, and they realize when see the mirror, okay, I just wait 20 years of my life, 30 years of my life, just working, working, working. And people actually struggle to set boundaries. People actually struggle to have healthy relationships. And people actually struggle to have relationships with oneself.
That's right. Excellent. Go ahead, Rob.
So one thing I just want to throw in there though is the fact that I don't think when you talk about burnout, and if it's at home or if it's at work, I don't think burnout is a tsunami wave that hits you just out of nowhere. Like it's just like one thing happens. I think it's incremental. I think it's a whole lot of little things that creep into your life. And the thing is that as the pressure or responsibilities at work are creeping up, there's a lot of other things that are starting to happen because now, you might be taking on more tasks at work, but you might not be sleeping as well. So all of a sudden your sleep quality is going down. You might not be eating as well. You're going to go pick up some fast food to try to get by. And so there's a lot of different factors that are all slowly changing. And I think that's how you arrive at this place of burnout. It's not like you just showed up one day and said, "Oh, I had a hard day today. I think I'm burnt out."
Yeah.
I think, and it's all the factors, and especially it's one thing when you're a leader at work, you're in charge of a lot of people and you got stress. But when you have a family at home, the two are interconnected, because I mean, if you've got children who are sick, listen, you're at work. It doesn't matter how good you are, you're not at your best because your mind is with your child that's not feeling well at home. It drains on you. Especially if they have a cough or, and they're not sleeping, you're worried. And then the other part is that there's been times where I've been at home with my kids and I had a stressful day at work and all of a sudden now my patience is gone, because of what was going on at work. And all of a sudden now I'm not the best father. So you can really get yourself into a tailspin. You arrive at burnouts
Yeah.
over a long iteration.
No, I totally agree. It is a compounding effect, in my opinion, as well. And let's look at the impact of burnout in reality. Is um, the impact could be it has an impact on your health that you talked about. You start eating like crap. You stop going to the gym. You stop taking care of yourself. Period. On it has an impact on relationships. So again, if you're going towards that and that burnout is compounding, there's times where it does impact your relationship and it does sway you to sway some people to divorce because you're not spending time with your partner and you're not paying attention to your partner, and also impacts on the family. So there's a lot of impacts that attribute to burnout, and I think again we do have to be mindful of it, and I think we do have to raise more awareness, especially with leaders, because people are looking up to you and people are following you and listening to you. So it's important for them to lead by example and have these conversations with others. But like Angel said, you have to also lead yourself, and you have to be aware of that yourself before you can preach that to anyone else.
I remember there was a moment when I finished my time at sea, and I just got promoted, and I was supposed to take a job in the formation, and I was burnt out. I was at a point where I knew something was wrong. And I was scared, and I went to go talk to the guy that I was going to be replacing, and so we're having a coffee, and I looked at him and I said, "Listen, I have to tell you something. I don't feel like I can do the job. It's not that I'm not prepared. It's not that I'm not competent enough to do the job. I just don't feel like I'm all there, and I'm scared, and I'm being honest to you." And it was a life-changing moment, because he had quickly said to me, "Oh man, this is normal. He's like, I've experienced that when I came off my tour." He's like, "All these other people have had that." And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not aware of this, because this is not common knowledge. No one's talked about this. A lot of people kept their cards close to their chest, right? And so that was a little bit life-changing for me, is when I started to realize that I wasn't the only one experiencing burnout. But the thing is that it was almost a cultural thing where people were priding themselves on being workaholics and burning out and still persevering, and then what happened afterwards was, once I started getting better, I started being very vocal to everyone that I knew. I was telling them, I experienced burnout. This is what's going on, to hopefully change their reality. So even if they only heard one person talk about being burnt out, I was okay for it to be me, because I knew how much of an effect it had on me, knowing that I wasn't the only one.
And that's a great point, Rob.
Yeah, if you allow me to add something there.
Yes. Go ahead.
So we tend to see the burnout as the last consequence of something, and I agree with you, Bob. Is the moment of the realization that we've been accumulating over time certain habits that get us to that point. So that's the reason why we said always, well, we need to look after ourselves. We need to look after the time that we spend doing something and the time that we spend not doing something. For example, self-care, quality time, quality of relationships. Understanding that, Roberto, is that, say, being also honest and say, hey, I'm experiencing this. I cannot take this on board right now. But what's happening is we realize that after experience sometimes, and that's the sad point, because we can avoid the mistakes by looking at someone else's, or reading the book, or listening to the podcast. So we can avoid falling into those mistakes. And what's happening when I don't know, 15 years ago in my personal life. I was working young manager, important department, and I was carrying on my team to burn out. And the reason why was I wanted to get everything done. I delegate. I think that's one of the main things that I try to master from early in life is the art of delegation. But what's happening is I also lead by example. So I ask a project to be done and I do the project with my team. But then the project became a bigger challenge and I was in the challenge. So we were working 16 hours a day. We start at 8 in the morning and we finish by 2 a.m. And what's happened in a matter of weeks, everyone was tired. People started not showing up because they were tired. They couldn't carry on with that pace. And that was the moment when we have a meeting and they say, okay, we love the project. We love your style. We want to get it done, but we need to start cutting hours because this is actually going to be the result. We are burnout. Say, okay, that moment, the self-awareness, the self-regulation, the self-realization that when you are carrying on certain habits, is going to get you certain results. So we take care of the habits, we take care of ourselves, we take care of our team, so we don't get into the consequence of experiencing burnout. That's part of the thing.
That's right.
One thing that really comes to mind though is that, you know, it's when you think of, if you think of your career or you think of, you know, let's say this job that you're working in, if you think of it as a marathon, you know, you can sprint for a little bit, you know, so you can hit a deadline or you can get something done, and that's fine, sprint. But you're not sprinting that whole marathon.
Yeah.
You know, there's only going to be so much energy in your tank. There's only so many sprints you've got while you're doing that marathon until you get up to a point that you can't even walk, you know, and sometimes by having a couple of those cumulative sprints, you're actually hurting yourself for being able to actually complete that marathon. And I think it's the same thing if you go into a job, you know, and your boss starts putting on more pressure, and or you put pressure on your team and you start delivering. It's like, well, you just did a sprint and you just delivered, but you can't do that indefinitely. You absolutely can't. You know, you will be heading to burnout, or your team will be heading to burnout quite shortly, and you have to be aware of that. That's what comes to mind when I heard you speak there, Angel.
Yeah, and I think that's a great analogy, Rob, because another point to that is, again, there's a lot of young leaders out there where they're trying to climb that corporate ladder a little too fast, and they're putting a lot of pressure not only on themselves but on their teams as well. And you got to put that ego aside, and you got to take your time. Leadership is not a race to the top; it's a journey, right? It's not how fast you got to that point. It's what did you do along the way? How many people's lives did you change along the way? It's not just about you. It's not about you, you know, gaining those titles and the salaries. Is how many people did you bring up with you, right? And I think that's a point that they miss, and that's why the sprint and running comes into play, and they're just racing all the way and burning everyone out in the process. So those are great points, guys, that you brought up. Now, let's go back to the family, as we spoke about in Angel. You talked about, you know, we come from parents, and you know we're in constant, you know, we're in constant engagement with our family members. We started up as growing up in a household, and you know, the culture that it was built. What do you guys think? The role, what role does a family support play in development of a strong leader?
Well,
If you allow me this one,
Sorry?
I'm gonna take the lead here.
Sure, go ahead.
go ahead.
Look, in matter of support, I reckon that everything starts with understanding our values. For example, my core value is love. If you express that into the family, you're gonna get it back. So what we give, we get back. That's actually how the law of the universe works. You know? We put something in and we get something back with us. So loving your family is the main thing, so that the family can love you back. And when you need to um, carry on with leadership responsibilities out of the family circle, so they're going to be giving you that support just by default as a result of what you have put in the circle of your family. Love, effective communication is they are two main keys, values, strategies that you can implement every single day. So you want more support from your family, you need to support your family more. You want more love from your family, you need to love them more. You want more dedication and understanding from your family, you need to dedicate and understand your family more. I reckon that's part of the main thing.
Excellent. Go ahead, Rob.
So I believe that you can learn you can learn two different things from growing up in your family with regards to leadership. You can learn the things that are going great, what works, and then you could also see examples of things that don't work, that you don't like. And I think both are equally important. So if you're growing up in a household that is very focused on getting a paycheck and having lots of things, and as a result they're workaholics and they're always working and you don't have that quality time, well, you could look at that and say, okay, well, is that what I want to emulate one day? Is that how I want my kids to feel? You can pick and choose and say, well, maybe this does work for me or it doesn't. But I feel that there's good examples and bad examples of what you can pick up from within your family.
For sure. Now let's go to the point, Rob, and talk about the family support in specific. How does the family support help you develop your strength as a leader? So what Angel talked about was love, right? If your family shows you love, you're gonna go out there and you're gonna build that strength as a leader, and you're gonna lead with love.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts behind that? What family support is important, and in terms of developing your leadership, your strength in leadership?
Do you mean like support from like your children, or are you looking from
Immediate family.
it's different for me, man, because I mean I
And it could be at any stage, Rob, right?
Yeah.
At any stage.
Well, I don't know. I think I might be the the outlier here, right? Because I mean, when I moved away, 18 years ago, I was far away from my core unit. I was far away from my brothers. I was far away from my parents and my grandparents, and so I was operating solo. So I can't really even really comment on what it is to have the support, because maybe I had support, but it was from afar and it was distant, and it wasn't necessarily something I could really draw on.
Okay. But when you started to have a family,
Yeah.
You built your own family. Now you've built that unit within your own kind of world, and you were still in a leadership role. So what do you think, what role does that family support play in developing your strength as a leader when you're out there working?
Yeah, well, and so in that context, when I was the engineer of the ship, and my partner was at home taking care of the kids, it gave me that relief. And I mean, I think to a certain extent, I mean, I compartmentalized a lot. So when I was home, I was home. When I was at work, if I knew that my partner had, was taking care of the kids, I was able to completely shut that part off in my mind and focus and know and not have to worry about being back home. So I mean, I feel that was key. Granted, after my divorce, I didn't have that, and so I had less to offer to work when I was just being solo, and I didn't have that home base to prop me up and support me.
Yeah, and again, and that's why it's so important. And I like this question, because family support does play a role in, in terms of who you develop into as a person, because you were brought up by that unit. For me, it would be, there's two things that they can do. I love the love part is very important. A family support can instill and build your confidence, and that's how you build that strong leadership with good communication, because that's how your family supported you throughout your life. Or they can feed your insecurities. So if you're in a house where you're being beat up mentally all the time, and people telling you that you're not good enough, and that does happen, that's going to impact you in your life the same way. And it's going to translate to the manager. I don't even want to say leader, because I don't think at that point you will be a leader, but they're managers with a lot of insecurities, and you can tell how they translate those insecurities onto people.
I've seen that. I've seen some. I've had some bosses in the past who, yeah, they leverage their position at work to really make themselves feel bigger than they are, and I think that was coming from a place of lack, from something that they were receiving at home.
Yes,
and that was unfortunate for all of the subordinates who had to deal with that wrath, right? But it's and of course that person probably wasn't even aware that they were leashing out the way that they were.
exactly.
If you allow me to jump in,
Go
look at
ahead.
this. You say a keyword there, Roberto, and is boss. So not every boss is a leader, not every manager is a leader. And when we define ourselves as leaders, or teams, the CEOs as a leaders, or family recognize us as a leaders, is because we've been running that marathon of life, and we have accomplished that title of being leader, or becoming leader. When you encounter, and I encountered that too in all the environments that I have worked in my life. So when you encounter a boss or a manager who's trying to make you feel that you are not good enough, for example, that's something that you can find as a reflection of who they believe they are in reality. So if you both say you are not good enough, probably they are seeing a mirror. So they are seeing something in you that they don't want to recognize in themselves, or they are trying to find it in you that they haven't accomplished something that you already have. So self-awareness in this point is important. I reckon that we need to put ourselves on to a test almost every single day, just to check out our emotions, how we see ourselves and how other people see us. Because as we were discussing at the beginning, there are expectations. We respond to the expectation of the environment, we respond to the expectation of the families, we respond to the expectation of the people that we are around, that we actually spend the time with. Unfortunately, or fortunately, just depending, we tend to become the average of the 5 people that we spend the more time with. So if you spend 16 hours working with someone who believes that you are not good enough, certainly you are going to become not good enough. If we are in a family where your family, your spouse, your brothers and sisters believe that you are not good enough, and you spend most of the time with your family, if you don't do something about it, you are going to become not good enough. Because at the end of the day, we tend to adopt the habits and the styles that we are shown, because normally we learn by what we see, perceive, and do every single day. So we need to put ourselves to a check almost every day and check out how we feel, what are the emotions, what's the input and the output that we are living every single day. So, and this message is for everyone. If you are in a work environment when your boss or someone else is telling you that you are not good enough, you are feeling that you are not good enough, hey, put yourself into a check, into a test immediately, and probably that's not the right environment. Definitely, it's not the right boss for you. It's not the right manager for you. Definitely, it's not a leader. You need to recognize that. We tend now to call everyone a leader. No, not everyone is a leader. Anyone could be a boss, anyone could be a manager, but not everyone is a leader. And probably that person is not the right person for you to be around with, to be hanging out with. So looking at the environment, looking at yourself, value yourself, and understanding what you are coming from, what are your goals, what are the foundation of your personality, your behavior, that's going to give you the opportunity to move to another place where you can actually develop yourself and growth. If you are the type of person that wants growth in life, and I believe that we all want that, is realizing that point, the realization of that point, that actually is going to allow you to be good enough, be more than good enough, and get into the right environment with the right people that's going to help you to grow.
Awesome.
Just one small thing to throw in there is that I think, Angel, just to jump on your last point though, is that when you are, that it's that self-awareness and that's checking in aspect. I think when you're not where you're supposed to be, I think you have, Rob, we've talked about this on other podcasts. I think you have that answer inside you. I don't think you have to think about it. I think you have to feel it. I think you have to reflect and say, is this where I want to be in my life right now? And sometimes you could have great employees, you could have a great boss, but maybe the greater organization is you feel like this is not where I'm supposed to be. Maybe I need to change my career. Maybe I need to do something else. Even with your kids or with your family, if you are not performing in the manner that you want to be, the best father that you can be, you check in with yourself and you start to say, okay, well, I feel like I'm off. I feel like I'm short patience. I feel like I need to be doing a little bit more, or I need to be doing a little bit less activities, because sometimes we can be doing too much. But I think the answer is always inside us. But a lot of people don't take the time to stop and self-reflect, because a lot of people are always focusing on, well, I've got supper tonight and we've got this activity, and then tomorrow we've got this birthday party, and then on Friday we got to go swimming class.
Yes.
And you're pushing. And if you don't stop to check in, then it's progressively you're going further out of misalignment, right?
Yeah. And that's the key. It's we never take that pause to do that self-reflection. It's always, society's become, especially North America, go, 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 go. And it's nonstop. So from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep, your mind is not only running a million miles an hour, but so are you in terms of you've got so much on your plate. When do you have time to reflect? Right. And it's important to take that time to do that reflection. So great points, gentlemen. And that was great. Now, this next part that I want to talk about, which is perfect, because the three of us are from, three different cultures. So I think that this question, fits best for all of us to answer, specifically you guys. And the question I'd like to ask is, how do culture and generational differences influence family dynamics and leadership styles? And how can these variances be leveraged for success? So let's think about, we're all from different cultures. So how do your culture specifically and the generational differences, so between your grandparents, your parents, and yourself now, how does that influence, the family dynamics and your leadership styles? And how do you use those to leverage them for success?
Yeah. I start here.
Go ahead.
You are getting into deep waters, Rob. That's the first thing I want to say. That's a deep water. Now, look at this. It's all about identity. Yes, we are from different cultures, and it's really good point that you are putting here. I'm living in Australia, and this is a very diverse country. I have worked with people from Asia, Africa, South America, North America, Europe, all people from everywhere everywhere in the world. And I'm gonna tell you something. Culture, family culture, and country culture stand always before the person. So people, for example, that I met from India, they bring their heritage with them, and is the culture first before them. Um, People from, let's say, Spain, you can recognize them because they have their own identity, their own way to do things. So recognizing this diversity is important when you are stepping into a leadership position because you need to understand people, you need to understand the identity of people, you need to understand the values and how they manage their own lives. So that's why, and I always want to say this, everyone could be a boss, everyone could be a manager, but not everyone could be a leader because the leader understands people, understand these things. Um, when you get into these type of people, into these personalities, then you start recognizing, okay, this person value more family than job, or this person is not workaholic, but they value more the time that they spend at job than spending out with someone else, and that kind of things. So how that helps you to grow actually as a leader is a very important tool that we have because those backgrounds, those cultures, those identities actually give us an opportunity to become better leaders by understanding better the people, how the people work, how the people think, how the people performs, and how the people recognize what people recognize in someone who want to be a leader. And that's very important because it's not about pleasing that people, but it's about leading to the expectations. Leading by being led is important at this point. Now, how that's happening with family? I'm coming from Venezuela. Our culture is quite different. Our culture is more fast-paced in some places. Um, Sometimes we don't stop into the deep water because we need to get the result faster. So we work for the result, get it faster, get it done, move on to the other one. It's more like a style of from the US as well. So get the result, move on, go to the next point. And sometimes we need to stop and look at what we are leaving behind because we are leaving quite a few holes there. And the system start falling apart by itself just because the process, the culture of moving on quickly, faster, doesn't allow you to do every single thing that need to be done in detail during the time, the proper time that need to be done. Now, family is part of that culture. So we respond as well to the expectation of the family and we grow according to the expectation and the family culture. So if you are in a toxic family environment, let's say that, probable as a leader, you are going to bring with you few of the things that you are having within your family. So if you recognize in your family that we all find a leader in every single environment. If you are with a group of friends, someone is actually always recognized like, okay, this is the one that organized the party. This is the one that keep the group together. This is the one that set the best topic on the table, etc., etc. So we always are going to find a leader at something in every single group. So it's with the family. In the family, you have the one who make the speech at the end of the year, the one who organize the party for everyone's birthday. So there are some certain leaders everywhere. And what's happening is when you recognize that in your family and you get some of those traits from your family, so you become the type of person that can growth in this type of environment, in all this environment. So understanding where you're coming from is actually, and knowing where you're coming from is actually the base from where you are right now and where you are going to be. And probably that all families are different. Some have different traits and characteristics. Getting into that, understanding that part and being involved actually with your family is the main thing, the first thing, the first foundation, the first pillar to help you grow in your life as a leader. So you see the leader in your family, you model it if he's a good leader. And we were talking about negative leader the other day. So look at the good leader. Look at the one that actually is getting the best result for the family. Look at the one that's actually getting the best result for the group of where you are involved with. And take some of those traits, put it on yourself, learn the skills, and become a better leader by that, by modeling those ones that are doing that are performing to the level, to the expectation that you probably need to perform. And I reckon that every single leader need to be aware of the people that they are leading. Listening, effective communication, deliver a proper message, and understand that culture, understand that identity, and of course, be aware of our own identity. That's the most important thing at every point. It's not about being selfish. Actually, it's about being selfless, to be aware of our own identity, to define our own identity, so we can perform to the expectation of everyone, and everyone know, okay, who's Rob? Okay, Rob is this type of person, this word, this way, this family person, people person. So we know what to expect from Rob, and Rob know what to expect. Rob, we know what Rob expects about me. Same with Roberto, same with me. So that's part of the main characteristic. I do believe that family and culture influence over ourselves and how we perform in life.
Good. Excellent. Rob, you go next.
I don't know. I think he hit it pretty good. I don't know if I can add to that, to be honest.
Okay.
If anything, the only thing I would throw out is that, culture does have an impact on your identity. But the one other thing to keep in context is also where you're living. So as you mentioned that, you're from Venezuela, but you're in Australia. I think if you took myself, my culture, my identity in terms of how I operate in Toronto, it's going to slightly change when I arrive on the East Coast, where it's a little bit of a slower pace compared to Toronto. But then I think if you transported my family and you put me in southern Spain or southern Italy, in Europe writ large, I think the environmental pressures are different, and I think that has a huge impact as well with how you operate as a leader, as a workaholic, or as so on and so forth.
Yeah, I was just gonna, it's a good segue to what I was gonna bring up. So culture influences your beliefs. Do we all agree on that?
Yeah. Yes.
100%.
Your culture influences your beliefs. Now, both of you, including myself, we've left our original, culture, countries that we're from, and now we're working in different countries with different culture. How do you, as a leader, now let's say you guys were to, pick up from where you were originally, and you're now at this point of your life, you're now moving to a different country, and how do you adjust to that culture as a leader, and how do you work in an environment where you've now, again, you've got these beliefs instilled in you, but now you're in a whole different culture, different country, different environment. How do you make that adjustment? And I think there's a lot of people out there that are going through this. They've been leaders in their own countries. They've been leaders in their own countries, in that environment, in that workspace. And now, let's say they're forced to move and, come to a new country. And, that's what immigration and immigrants, as myself being an immigrant and my parents having to come here. How do you make that adjustment as a leader?
I think the number one, it comes down to is you have to adapt. The worst thing you can do is to stay rigid, is to go somewhere new and hold on to your old beliefs and to be so stuck in your ways, because I guarantee you that's 100%, recipe for disaster. I think when you go somewhere new, you really need to take the time to have a better understanding, to assess your current environment, the people you're working with, to get to know people, to understand their work cultures, in terms of what is the norm. Is the norm to take an hour break at lunchtime, or is the norm to work through your lunch because we have to hit the deadline? If you're in a position of, I say power, but if you're in any position over anybody and you're going to start implementing your will over them, it's either going to work or it's not going to work.
Yes.
And the thing is, you're going to find out very, very fast. And so I think the key thing is you have to adapt. You have to be able to assess what's going on and make the necessary changes. You have to change to them. The world's not going to change for you. That's my take on it.
Good. Assess and adapt. I like that.
Yes, I agree with you. I reckon that being an immigrant is a full experience. It's something that you need to live to understand. You don't understand it if you don't live it. And that transition could be easy or could be traumatic. That's going to depend of your identity and your belief. I do agree with you both in the point that we need to adapt. We need to be open to adapt. But on the other side, we also need to be clear about who we are. And here, at this point, I might bring the difference in the fact that when you say, Roberto, that the world is not going to change because of you, but you need to change because of the world. So this world already changed. So we are in three different countries connected by one piece of device.
Yes.
There are people flying over the world every single day. So the world that we are living today is not the same world that my parents lived 80 years ago or 60 years ago. Not the world from the earliest 1900s. It's not the same world. I reckon that we all need to understand that part and start living an adaptation process as well to the new dynamic of the world, because it's not me coming to Australia, I'm coming to your home, I'm taking your job, I'm taking your your people with me, and I'm going to put my narrative here. I reckon that the openness is from everyone. So we are getting people from different cultures, and we are getting people flying over every single day. And there is an exchange of experiences, there is an exchange of culture, and the adaptation process is for everyone. And the maturity of the human being is key at this point. So we believe ourselves that we get mature at a certain point of life. For some people, it's over the 30, for some people, it's over the 20s and the 40s, and so on. But in reality, when we are able and capable to open ourselves to a different culture and understand how Roberto thinks, how Rob thinks, and integrate everything in one way, in one new culture, even the culture of the group. Understanding that point is what actually help us to move along, to surf that wave properly. So without trauma, without a high impact, without causing damage to ourselves and or anybody else. I reckon that the world already changed, and thanks to that we can connect. And connecting with people is the most important thing, and the skill here is our ability to connect with other, our ability to understand other one, the man and the woman that we are interacting with, and our ability to be adaptable, and the ability of the other people to adapt as well to us. And that's where I say our identity play a role very important here. For example, I been this year participating in different events, Tony Robbins, JT Fox, those environments that you bring those American ones to Australia, and they start putting their narrative in the thing. Of course, it's their show, it's their event, it's their way to do things. But you understand that because we here understand that because we are able to adapt and understand that's their culture, and they are very clear about their identity, and it resonates at some part with me and some others not, and that's what makes us actually uh, build those relationships and growth from those relationships. So it's adaptability, effective communication, what actually help us to understand this difference and make the difference work for us.
Hey, Rob, there's two things I want to throw in there.
Yeah.
One is that, you start off, you say you as the leader, you as the parent, you got your style. The thing is that you have to adapt your style to your different employees, or say even for your children. So for myself, I've got four. My two oldest have ADHD, and one is that he gets distracted easily, and then the second one has a little bit longer for him to regulate his emotions. And what it means is that when I'm talking to my four kids, I have to be much more patient with my second son, who's got the emotional regulation, because if I just talk fast at him and I get upset at him because he's not listening to me, it's not going to go well. But I can be harder, not say harder. But I can be different with my other kids.
Mhm.
So I think there's a lot to say that you have to really tailor to not just the culture writ large as the organization, but to the individual.
Yes.
To understand your people, how they work, and have that custom relationship, right? The second thing I wanted to add, though, was I hope I didn't forget my the point. It was I think I'm forgetting it. Sorry.
We can come back to it, but here's what I'm going to pose to both of you. We talked about the culture. We talked about how culture influences our beliefs. Now, you each have values as an individual, right? Part of those values could have been influenced by culture, could have not. It's, that's totally on an individual level. Now, again, we also have to be very careful when we say the world is changing. We have to adapt to the world versus the world adapting to us. That could be a dangerous statement because, and why I say that is, would you compromise your beliefs and values to that change, right? That's where we have to be mindful. And the reason I ask that and I bring that up is, and I would ask you guys that, would you compromise your beliefs and your values when you're in a different environment? And I'll give you an example of that. So there's certain places, there's certain environments where this happens more than other places. And I'm not going to go give specific details of, the countries and, areas, but this does happen around the world. It happens more in certain places, in more of like, let's say third world countries versus first world countries where there's corruption and there's bribery. Now, are you as a leader with coming from different values and beliefs, are you going to compromise to adapt to that corruption? That's what we got to be mindful of. And I'll ask you guys that question.
Absolutely not, Rob. Look at this. I go to the foundation here.
Hmm.
The reason why I say parenting is the most important role in the life of another human being
Hmm.
is because we get to influence another one first. And what's happening is, if you are very clear about your identity and your values, and you have the ability to teach those values to your children, and they carry on in life with those ones, and they put it in place every single day, that's going to mean something in the process of change. So, who is actually responsible to making change in the world? Everyone.
Hmm.
Every single one of those are responsible of the world that we are living in right now. So today's world is the consequence of every single one of those. How
Yes.
we act, what our belief, what we think, how we work, how we get into relationships, how we connect with others. So that's the reason why I say we need to be clear about our values. We need to be clear about our identity, because otherwise, what's happening is where are we going to direct the world now if we are able to adapt to corruption, to bravery, to all the negative stuff that are actually causing damage to the world? So we all are going to contribute then with that and direct the world or countries or cities or families to exactly those anti-values. So then we're going to start teaching our kids
Mhm.
how important it is to be corrupt, how important it is to get influenced by putting the money on the table, how important it is to buy the conscience of someone else, how important it's going to be to destroy someone else so I can stop, I can step on top of the ladder and look at everyone else from above. No, we need to understand that point, that we all are responsible for that. And the thing is that normally we don't take responsibility or accountability about it. And we say, well, that's the government, that was the prime minister, that was the president, that
Yeah.
was the this one, the mayor, whoever. But the reality is that we are not setting high expectations about it. We are not demanding better results. We are not demanding the proper message so we can direct our cities or communities or
Yes.
families in their way. And that's the thing. That's
'Cause
part of the thing.
that's
So
right.
it's
Because
sorry.
there's somebody accepting that, if you say the government's corrupt and they're doing this, there's someone else that's accepting that.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly, exactly, exactly. Why are we connecting from three different countries through a piece of technology? Because we said that and we understood the concept, but we are doing something good with it.
Yes.
And there are many people doing something wrong with it as well, with the technology and connecting in a different way. But what is going to be the message that's going to impose the narrative in tomorrow world? Is going to be the message that some other people are putting on the internet and being corrupt, being through violent, being violent, being criminals. There is no other way to call them. So there are many criminals updating the internet every single day, but there are also many, and thankfully we are more, many people putting a good message, putting a good narrative, a different narrative to help shape the world that our kids are going to inherit
Mhm.
tomorrow. And that's the thing. So at the end of the day, is not just the adaptation, is our capability to demand better from the world. So,
Yes.
and our ability to prepare better men and women that can have an impact on the world. Because it's not just about title. It's not responsibility of the high government. I'm not going to go to the president, the prime minister, and say, hey, it's your responsibility. You need to respond. But I can demand something different by doing something different, by expecting something different. And that's the thing.
Awesome. Go ahead, Rob. You were going to say something.
So what I'd add to that is I would just say is that we are our beliefs and our values, and it's through our actions. Okay. If you're a man or a woman of integrity, you don't have the ability to just say, well, I'm going to be truthful, I'm going to be loyal 6 days of the week. It's either you're loyal all the time or you're not loyal. Same thing with your integrity. It's either you stand to your values or you don't. There's no gray area in between, and so it starts with knowing who you are and what your values are, and knowing that you're not going to compromise on them because it's a definition of who you are. And when someone says your name in your organization, at least this is how I found it in the Navy, was like your name meant something. People knew that you were a person of your word, a person that wasn't going to compromise. And so specifically as an engineer, but this could be related to doctors or any other great professions, is, it means something to be a person of value, and you can never compromise that. You compromise it once, you're dirt.
Yep. That's I won't get into the 4 agreements, but that's one of the agreements is be impeccable with your word. Now, I wanted to tie this back to what both of you guys said, actions, and what you said, Angel, is it starts with parenting. Now, I want to give everyone an example of this. This is very recent. So we had Halloween here, what was it, a couple of days ago, a couple of nights ago. And what's happening now with a lot of houses is, families are leaving bowls of candy outside, and, there's an honor system. There's a sign that says, take one, right? So everybody can kind of have a candy as they come by. Now, it was kind of sickening to see these videos being posted on TikTok, because now everyone's got cameras all over the place, where the parents of those kids are not only encouraging their kids to empty that bowl, they're doing it. So there's your values. You're teaching your kids it's okay at that age. Now, you blame the kids for that? So when that kid grows up having those values and those beliefs, guess what? That's where the corruption is. That's where the stealing is. That's where, this is why I wanted to talk about leadership and family. There's so much influence you have as a parent on your kid that I don't think some people understand.
One thing I will say, though, is that, and I mentioned it earlier, is that child who grows up with that parent, those parents who are promoting this action, it can go one of 2 ways.
Yes.
Either they're going to follow and do as what they saw, or they're going to be so repulsed by that, and they're going to be so disgusted with that they're going to go 180 degrees the other direction.
I agree, Rob, but it might take a while for them to realize that. Right. And that's my point. So you're gonna grow up a certain part of your life doing that, and what will it take for you to go to jail, for you to get hurt, for somebody to retaliate? And why would you put your kid at that risk? That's a risk you're putting your kid through because you're not thinking about it. You're saying it's okay, and look what you're showing your kid to do. And honestly, I was very distraught by those videos, especially when I see a parent stuffing the bag of a kid with the entire bowl. And they know there's cameras because they're looking at the cameras and doing it. Right?
It's so wrong. There's no way to pretty this up. It's just wrong.
It is, and that's why I really appreciate you stating that, Angel, that it does start with the parents. It's it starts somewhere, right? Now I know we've kind of extended this podcast, but there's one last thing I wanted to discuss. before we end this podcast, and I think it's important because I can see a lot of people asking this question or coming across this point and not knowing what to do. So how do leaders approach decision making when their choices have significant impacts on both their family and the organization?
That's a nice skill, Rob. And we need to train for this. We need to get trained. We need to have the experience for this. When you go to the process of decision making, that's a skill that we need to develop every single day. And we develop that skill with what we do every single day. We are making decisions all the time. 24 hours a day, we are making decisions where we want to focus on, how it's going to, we learn to read what's the consequence of that decision. If I look up, what's the consequence of that decision? If I look down, what's the consequence of that decision? So big decisions that have a large impact require more thinking, critical thinking, analytical thinking, and strategy. We need to learn how to be good strategists. So for those decisions, when it's going to have a large impact over organization and families, we need to understand, we need to design strategy, we need to develop critical thinking, and we need to know the consequence before making the decision. We need to be able to look at the consequence before making a decision, and everything starts with a why. Why I'm going to make the decision, who's going to be benefited, who is going to be impacted by it, and what are the consequences and the outcome that I'm gonna get out of this. So those are the main things when it's coming to decision making. Because what's happening when you make a decision and you don't realize the impact of it over the next year, 5, 10, 20 years. So when you get to the year 20 and you look back and you say, that was a wrong decision. But all the consequences are already there.
Yes.
You are living the consequences of that decision during 20 years. And you can recognize a leader for that. You can see the leader for that and be able to look at the consequence, live the consequence, and understand that those decisions, every single decision that you make in your life, need to be made thinking about the outcome. How is that outcome going to impact other people's life, your organization, your families, and someone else's families? If you're working in an environment with 2,000 people and you are the CEO of the company and you need to make a decision that's going to impact your organization, that you are having an impact over those 1,000 people and their families. So potentially, your decision have an impact over 5,000 people more.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's something that we need to take in mind with us every single day. Every single day that we make a decision, how it's going to have impact someone else's life, how it's going to impact their families and my own family.
I think it's priorities too, though, right, Rob? Like, I mean, is the priority for you to grow the company at all costs, which means that you can just burn through your employees because you don't care, because the only goal is to grow your company? Or do you want to grow? Do you want to have a company that is, well gelled, strong, a strong place that you can grow slowly, but you have where people feel safe and secure, But I think you have to identify your priorities.
Yes.
Before you can make any decision. But I do agree with Angel with regards to having to see the bigger picture and to understand how things are going to play out. But I mean, at the end of the day, you have to live with the outcome, with that final result.
Yep.
If you turn around and say, well, I just want to grow this company, well, that means you're going to have to live with the fact that you're going to be burning through a lot of employees, and it's going to be a miserable place to work at, and people aren't going to be happy because that's what, you're following your priority, right?
That's right. So I'm gonna give you both the same scenario, and I'll give you a chance to answer this, and this will be fun. So, with respect to the same question, you're both leaders, and you have a significant role in an organization, but the organization's asking you to relocate to, another state somewhere else, and you've got kids and you've got a family, and your kids love their school. They have lots of friends relationships they've built over the years. What decision do you make, and how do you make that decision? Right? Who wants to go first?
I'll jump first, only because like that's the life I've lived in, right? I mean, being in
That's
the Navy, we're all about relocating every couple of years, and if not me, I've got lots of friends who do it, and that's I think as for Navy culture or even the Canadian Armed Forces culture, that's something that's going to will have to be reviewed. It will have to be assessed and looked at going forward. In the 60s or the 70s, it was just accepted that you'll pick up and move whenever the military would tell you to do so.
Yeah.
But you had a couple kids at home, you probably had a spouse who wasn't working, and so it was easy for you to pick up and uproot and go. Today, one of the major issues that you'll see in the Canadian Armed Forces is that people are wearing the uniform, but they're married to a significant other who has their own identity. They have their own careers.
Yes.
And so it's not just a matter of what's the impact to the kids. Yes, the kids are going to not be happy about losing their friends and having to go somewhere else, but that's just a small little part of it. There's a bigger part. And I think you have to say to yourself, why are you working for? Are you working because you've been institutionalized since a young age that to fill your identity, that you feel that you need to climb a ladder to get somewhere? Because if that's your goal, then obviously you're going to take the move because you want to get the next promotion. But if you're only working so that you can have a lifestyle that you can support your family, well, then maybe you turn around and say, well, give the promotion to somebody else. I want to stay here because I'm happy with the amount of money I'm making. I'm happy with the job that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't need anymore. In fact, I just want to enjoy what I have. And I think that's the key thing, is being able to see that trap, because a lot of times, a lot of people they forget that the reason they're working is to be with their family and not to sacrifice their family to get a promotion. That's my take on it anyway.
Great point. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Look at this. We are in a moment of our lives that we are living the change again of the work dynamic, the job dynamic, and technology play an important role. Now we have remote work. We have different tools that we can use. So we don't need to live the same way that, for example, people live 60 years ago, as you mentioned, Roberto, when you get to move because you need to move, and that's it. There is no discussion about it. Different from the military and the corporative world, sometimes you have a choice or sometimes you don't. Mm-hmm. If you are working, let's say, in an important role, as you put the scenario, you need to move or lose. So in that case scenario, you also need to balance. So what's your first need? Is certainty? You need to keep your job, so you move, or is the opportunity to have a different job, a different work environment? So looking at those scenarios is always important. But at the end of the day, is what you prioritize. Yes. So if you prioritize your family, you prioritize yourself, you prioritize the company for which you are working. I reckon that depending on that, it's going to be easy find the answer. In my case, I prioritize my children. I need to discuss with them first. I need to tell them, okay, I have this opportunity. I might be able to move to the US, to Canada. I might be able to move to, I might be required to move to a different state. That doesn't need to be the country. It's just a couple of kilometers away. It requires for you to come with me and get another school, get a different environment. Probably if, as you say, okay, they have their life already sorted out because they have their friends, they have their environment and feel comfortable. So that's an important discussion on understanding what's the feelings about change. Um, that's why we need to be also uh, very focused on what we deliver at home.
Yeah.
So what are the sort of values that we are delivering at home? Because when you get to this discussion with your family and you say, okay, we are required to move to a different state or a different country because of job, and they're going to be responding according to what you are bringing to the table every single day as well. So when you put that discussion on the you bring that discussion on the table, the response is going to be the result of what you are putting everything every day there. Um, for me, my family is important. It is the first thing that I prioritize. I prioritize my children, that as you do. The discussion start there. Find out why do I need to move? Why I need to bring my family to a different environment? What is going to be the outcome for doing that? So what I value first. In this case, it's going to represent an opportunity, or it's going to represent a setback as well. We need to
Yeah.
understand that point, because the opportunity is not just about the title and the position, but the opportunity to have a different environment as well for the children. Is pointing growth, or is pointing stagnation. So those are the things that I put on balance, and I bring the discussion to the table, and I get involved my children on, before make the decision, because at the end of the day, the impact is over myself and over their lives. Um, Depending on your values and what you prioritize, what's more important for you is how fast and easy the decision is going to be made.
That's right. That's right. Go ahead.
One of those, I think it's also important to say too, is that if you are a competent person and a very confident person, you know, you're not held to any position or any company.
Yes.
You know, I think a lot of times people feel trapped, and maybe certain people are trapped. But if you are well educated and you got a lot of experience and you are a wonderful leader, if it's not this company, you're going to get another company, or you're going to go start a company, or you're going to do something. But your life should never be dictated by what the company's telling me to do, because if that's the world that you're living in, that's a company that I don't want to work for, is one that's telling me who I am. And I'd be more in a position to say, well, I'm willing to walk and find something else and do it on my own, so that I can be the father or the leader that I ought to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you brought up a great point, Rob, and that's where a lot of people struggle with that, self-limiting beliefs and fear, right? Fear is one of the biggest things in the human mind. So once you overcome that, and again, that's finding that self-awareness, and you can overcome that fear, and you've got the confidence, you've built that your mindset, you strengthen your mindset to get over these fears, then you know what decision you have to make, and you look at the values, does wealth or money trump your family? It comes to very simple like that. That's a very simple question, right? It could come to that question. I mean, again, for everyone it's different, but that's what you ultimately look at, because that opportunity is ultimately bringing you more money, right? And if you're going to be sacrificing, your family's happiness and your relationship with your spouse now, and the person you're married to, because like you said, you got to also look at them, and you got to think about them, because they've got a job, they've got their own career set up. You cannot be making a selfish move or you can compromise. Again, that comes to the communication, values, priorities. Everything that you guys have mentioned was dead on. So you guys, I think, nailed that question pretty well. And the reason for that question is, again, there's a lot of people that come to that cross point, and they don't know how to make that decision. So I think with speaking about it, they can kind of reflect back and use exactly what you guys talked about to make a better decision in those cases. So again, I thank you guys very much for a wonderful discussion today. There was a lot of great points. There was a lot of great stories that were shared, and I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a lot of value that's going to be taken away by the audience. And again, thank you guys very much. Now, Rob, we've talked about this. They can, if anybody has any questions, they can, send your questions either for Rob or Angel, using the comments below. And also, you guys can follow Angel, and he's got now set up his new leadership, Angel, and I will put the link to his sites below in this podcast, and you guys can follow him as well and ask any questions you like of Angel. Again, thank you very much, gentlemen. And for all those out there, keep doing what you're doing. Live your beliefs, live your values, and go out there and set a good example as leaders in your communities and in the world. So thanks, everyone, and have a wonderful day.